Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 9th of May. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by a colleague this morning in Joshua Barrie. How are you doing, Joshua?
Couldn't believe that yesterday, Derek. Your back must be sore from carrying this show, but man, good to be here, mate. Lots to talk about. The big one, obviously, as kind of discussed yesterday, the Morelos revelations from the weekend. So looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots to talk about, of course, in the build-up to the game at the weekend, the final Old Firm match of the season. Of course, nothing really riding on it in terms of league positioning, but it's a big game, I think, for Michael Beale in terms of getting that first win, getting that monkey off his back, if you like, and getting the better of Celtic. And before we talk all things Rangers, folks, just a quick word as ever to our podcast sponsors, Seneca Hair Restoration. If you're looking to get a hair transplant, perhaps, then these are the guys to go to. And I've popped the all-important links in the description box. So do go and check them out if that's something that you are thinking of. And if you want to subscribe as well, if you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter, if you want to subscribe to the website, then head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Just £2.99. I can't speak there. £2.99 per month to sign up at the moment. So, yeah, there you go. Right, let's talk Rangers, Joshua. There's a piece on the website this morning. In fact, this is from their newsletter, which gets issued prior to the story appearing on the website. It's totally free to sign up to the newsletter, folks. So I urge you all to do so. We've often got giveaways associated with that. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/email bulletins. Just stick your email address in there. You'll get an article every weekday around 5 o'clock, and you can also enter those giveaways. Often we're giving away tickets and what have you, so very much worth it. Piece on Alfredo Morelos, Joshua. Is big news coming out of the game on Sunday. Michael Beale's comments with regards to him coming on as a substitute, which was quite something. He said that Michael Beale said that you saw a difference when Alfredo came on in terms of energy and not a positive change. We need a focal point to the team. Alfredo Morelos is leaving in the summer. Joshua, he confirmed that as well, the manager. He leaves after 6 seasons at Ibrox, which is a long time for any player at any football club in the modern day. But for me, this sparked a bit of a debate as to what his legacy at Ibrox will be when he leaves. For me, I'll give my honest opinion. I don't think he's quite legendary status. I've seen some say that he'll leave a legend based on the fact that, of course, he was part of that 55 title-winning squad. He is the European record goal scorer, surpassing Ali McCoist. And his goals to games record is very good. 124 goals and 268 appearances for just the £1 million that Rangers paid HJK Helsinki in the summer of 2017. He may not go as a legend for me, Joshua, but for many, he's been a hero for a lot of young supporters who have been sort of starved of Rangers heroes growing up, such as being the landscape of Scottish football. He's been the poster boy for many, and he leaves with the best wishes from me. I know this season has been poor. He's not been the only one, but I wish him well on his way and thank him for his contribution. What's your opinion on Alfredo Morelos?
I think much like the team, Derek, the way it finishes, the way that the team cycle finishes, and obviously without winning any silverware for a lot of these players, will have a big impact on the immediate legacy, because for where Morelos has been in his Rangers career, it shouldn't have ended like this. Now, he, of course, has a lot of responsibility for that. I think every one of his managers has called him out publicly. You go back to the start of the season with PSV away, where he was dropped from the squad then. Equally, there's been a lot of... He's had to, I think, face a lot since he's come to the country. And at his best, he was so good. But I think, as the comment says there, when you look at him, the game that always sticks out in my memory was Feyenoord away with those 2 headers. I think the spell around the Dortmund game and just beforehand, and towards the end of the 55 season, those were 3 spells where you could just see when he was tuned in completely, how unplayable he was and how effective he was, because there wasn't much he didn't have. Now, this season, he's come off the back of his first, I think, real serious injury in his career. But it's really petered out. Morelos' energy in the final third is something that Michael Beale's spoken about before. I think it was after the Wraith Rovers game in the Cup. We know how important the off-ball stuff is to him and his team, and he needs a striker up there, I think, not just on the ball, but off it, to be really proactive, which Morelos hasn't been for him. So, yeah, the conversation of his legacy, there's so much to fit into it, because you think of all those European games, that title win last season, the European run, Dortmund away. But then there'll always be I think the frustration of what could have been naturally, not only because this is the way it ends, but because when he was on those highs, when he was playing for his country, when he was that good, he was such an asset for Rangers. So not only do you lose him for free, but you lose him having had a season that's nowhere near as what he can be as a player. I'm trying to think of his last real big performance, which probably was in the Europa League last season. Before that injury, he obviously played at Dundee then, and then he came back with that injury. I think it was from international duty. And ever since then, it's been that kind of downward slope, the Champions League. It looked for a while as though Beale was getting him back to some good form. And I think there's also some parallels to draw, Derek, between people will say, well, the messaging's different to what he said about Morelos for the last few weeks, but he's had to keep Morelos engaged, and he's had to try and keep these players engaged in a similar way to before and after the defeat in the Old Firm semi-final. The messaging's different because you're managing the season, and then suddenly you're not managing the season anymore. You're managing the project in the future and trying to get buy-in for that. So I think it's sad that it ends this way. I think Morelos obviously definitely has some responsibility in that as well. I think his legacy in time will be a very strong one, though, because of all the memories that he's given supporters, and also because for a period of time, Derek, he really was the only player in that team who was capable of winning a match and carried the team at points, and in Europe, as we know, was just so effective for a real number of years.
Yeah, let's get to a few comments that are coming in. Denzel, first of all, says, is Josh coming live from 1758? Well, different background behind you today, Joshua.
This is HQ as well, but the other room's taken, so that's why. It's nice interior, but not my design. Denzel can't take the credit.
He's in the foyer, folks, which is a lovely part of the building. So that's where Joshua is. He's not time traveling this morning. Let's get to a few comments here. Interesting point. He's been just on Morelos. He's been good value for the transfer fee, but his poor attitude and lack of professionalism at times has let him and the team down. As you mentioned, Joshua, that Michael Beale isn't the first manager to call him out. Discipline issues have sort of plagued him over the course of his time at Ibrox. However, there was a comment that came in when he has been on it. He's been pure box office, and he has led the line really, really well for Rangers. But unfortunately, this year, he looks a shadow of the player. Just a different viewpoint, Robert Binney. Poor show, by the way, from Beale. Never before have I heard a Rangers manager berate a player. Trying to think. Well, I've just said that Van Bronckhorst and Gerrard, in a way, have publicly shown their unhappiness about Morelos at times. But what did you make of Beale's comments, Joshua? I've got to be honest, I thought they caught me by surprise at the time. We've not heard them speak like that before of the players, but it spoke of a manager who's lost pretty much all patience he had in the players. So we don't know what's going on. We're not privy to what's going on in the dressing room and behind the scenes. But what did you make of Beale's comments?
Again, I think it's indicative of the overall situation. You see the change that's going on off the park and on the park as well. Derek, Rangers have lost after highs of the last couple of seasons. They've lost 3 trophies this season. So there needs to be drastic change in criticism, and there needs to be accountability for, I guess, all levels, and that extends to the players as well. You know, Beale said back at the start of, I think it was April, that the remaining Old Firm games would decide futures, and it seems like they have. I don't know if Morelos was ever really likely to stay beyond the summer. But again, as the comment says there, someone like Kamara, Morelos, Kent, when they were at their best for Rangers, they were so effective. real sellable assets. You think back to that Antwerp game, I think it was Morelos had something like 8 goal contributions over the 2 legs. Might not be have been as much as that, but it was a lot. And when you think back to that version of him and that version of Kent and that version of Kamara, the fees that will now be commanded for only Kamara, presumably if he does depart this summer, it is not a reflection of what should have been. It's not a reflection of how good those players were at that moment in time. So I think there'll just be frustration all around naturally from the manager as well that it's ended this way. Obviously, we don't know Morelos' point of view, but I think you're right. I think the fact that with 3 managers calling him out in public, that criticism is probably fair. Equally, on the topic of legacy, I don't think in time that will be the presiding memory of him. I think all the memories that he has given will always be tinged with an element of, as this team will always be tinged with an element of what could have been. And that, again, I think that speaks to the need to evolve and move beyond players, because obviously no player is ever bigger than a club, but there is also a time to move on, and picking that time is difficult. And maybe if that time doesn't arrive, then it's always going to peter out, as it kind of has this season.
Yeah, so many interesting points coming in. Casey, first of all, says the media demonised Alfie so much over the last 6 years, and unjustly so in the many instances. His experience and legacy could and should have been much more positive. Matt Weir with an interesting point as well. He says, time will heal wounds. We'll fondly remember him in years to come. He was my lad's first hero, so we'll leave with best wishes. We had our £1 million out of him. Just wish we could have cashed in at the right time. That's nailing the head stuff there, Matt. Absolutely spot on. And as I mentioned, for a lot of young lads, you hear that Alfredo Morelos is a player that they idolise, and they're going to have to find a new hero. But as CGM 55 points out, even at his best, his domestic goal return is nowhere near good enough for a Rangers striker. His chance conversion rate is around 1 in 4. Poor, he says. Rangers need to find someone prolific in front of goal domestically, don't they, Joshua? Now, Antonio Cholak has been out injured. There's a general consensus that he isn't going to be the answer. Rangers need to bring in 2 strikers for me in the summer, and one that has to guarantee you 15 plus goals a season, which Rangers have struggled to find for a many number of seasons now.
Yeah, they have. And to that point of Morelos' goal record over a season, I think there's not really been a season where for the whole season he's been in form, probably. If you think back to the 2019-20 season, probably not for want of trying, but he had that barren run in front of goal for kind of 3 months or 2 months after scoring. It was more than 25 goals in the first half of the season, I think it was, and he was the Europa League's top scorer. Think back to the title-winning season. He had an injury as well, but it was really only at the end of maybe the last 4 months of the season, 5 months maybe, that we really saw his best form. So that probably hasn't helped his goal tally over the course of the season. I do think the Rangers don't necessarily need a player like Morelos, and I think there's a wider conversation within this, but the tactical approach that got the best out of him towards the end of Gerrard's first season, where Gerrard was playing with wider players to accommodate Defoe, they brought them in closer to kind of change the shape a bit, and that worked really well for Morelos. And I guess tactics is about getting the best out of players, isn't it? And to get the best out of him, I think you needed to play players reasonably close to him at points and allow him to drop in and link play and be very involved. And maybe he was again towards the end of his Rangers career always more likely to come towards the ball and offer a passing option than run behind. So he's a certain profile of striker, and you see how Beale's been using his forwards in this kind of split striker system with the box midfields, which have got an article about this on my Twitter if you want to read it. Kind of playing down the sides more, and it's different. And whether that's just because they don't have the focal point, but they've used that with Morelos as well, I don't know. What I'm trying to say is I don't think that Beale necessarily needs a striker in the Morelos mould to be successful. I think ultimately what the last few months have shown is a very different story for this Rangers team, I think, if they have a clinical finisher. Yes, a lot of work still needs to be done to it. Yes, that doesn't just mean that you add one player into it or a couple of players and it works, because that mistake was made last summer. But what I think it does show is that they're not reliant necessarily on that type of striker. And it'll be interesting to see what Beale does in response to it, because he definitely needs, as you say there, not just one, but 2 clinical players to make good of the work done behind them, because Rangers have lots of players, I think, that can get the ball into attacking areas and create chances. But Michael Beale said at the weekend, sometimes it feels like they're the most wasteful team in the world, and I think that goes beyond expected goals numbers or anything. I think that just goes to their opportunities in the final third and their ability to do something with the ball, and too often, especially under Beale, that's kind of been left wanting.
Yeah, but just on that goal tally, CGM 55-15, more like 20 to 25, Derek. I do agree. Ideally, that's what you're wanting. I just want that guaranteed. You're guaranteed at least 15 and ideally upwards of 20. It's been so long since we've had someone that's so prolific in front of goal. Basically, we need a Chris Boyd reincarnated to deal with domestic matters. Interesting point, just off the back of Morelos. Heller gets in touch. Morning, Heller. Given what's been on his wife's Insta, do you think you'll be seeing Ibrox again before he leaves? Of course, this was a little video, a nice little video of Morelos and his daughter, wasn't it? Just heading out of Ibrox after the game, past the supporters. That looked very much like a goodbye, Joshua. Will he get the opportunity, do you think, to say a proper goodbye to the fans?
Be very interesting to see. I'd be surprised, Derek, but maybe that's me being too optimistic. I don't know. Would you? I feel like that there's. I don't know what the majority of comments think, but I think people would probably like the opportunity to say,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Am I being too...
I think, I mean, I might be totally wrong here, but even as mentioned on the show yesterday, I think McGregor deserves it. The Hearts game now, I'm not saying he should start the game or whatever, but I mean, it was a game at the weekend, Bristol Rovers Bolton, where Joey Barton brought off his goalkeeper with like 10 minutes remaining, and brought on another goalkeeper just to get a standing ovation. I mean, we've seen it last season.
Yeah, we've been there, haven't we?
We have been there when we thought that was going to be Alan McGregor's swan song, but it didn't turn out to be. So perhaps something similar like that, just to say goodbye to the fans. I'm not entirely sure what the general consensus would be. I'm sure there'll be some that say that they would like to say goodbye properly to Alfredo, and there's some that would like to see the back of him. I'm sure it's going to be a bit divided. Hugh actually gets in touch. He says, be sad if Alfredo doesn't have the opportunity for his goodbyes. A lot of players don't get the opportunity to say a proper goodbye, Joshua, but I guess it's going to be up to Michael Beale at the end of the day.
Yeah, it will, and we should talk about Robbie McCrory as well on the topic of goalkeepers. We can get into that, but that would be my inclination. It's been a very difficult season for Rangers, a frustrating one, and Morelos has epitomised that right from that red card against Hibs to getting dropped against PSV, and Rangers have needed big players. They've needed big players at both ends of the pitch, and they haven't had it. But I'd stray on that side of there should be an opportunity for a goodbye as well. I guess the other topic of conversation, Derek, is how Rangers cope without a striker in these last few games, because the old firm doesn't mean anything, but Michael Beale will know that it's going to do him no harm to win that game, and not carry that record into the new season of not having won an Old Firm game yet. Matondo and Sakala, again, playing that kind of split striker role, doesn't rely on a focal point. Can that work against Celtic in the Old Firm? I'd be surprised if Morelos starts after the comments at the weekend. We know that Cholak hasn't been fit, so it probably will be that. Be interesting to see how it works. As I say, I think it's got potential to work, that system. I quite like it. Rangers just needs players to be clinical, and you look at those two passes that Matondo played into Sakala at the weekend. I think it's those type of moments that Rangers haven't capitalised on and have made games a lot more difficult than they've needed to be domestically over the course of the season. Yeah.
Right, let's get to a few more points that are coming in. Hugo Bear says Teddy Cantwell is becoming a new hero. He's certainly loving life at Rangers, isn't he, Joshua? How much are you loving watching Todd Cantwell? Great goal at the weekend again. It's been a joy to watch him. He's hit the ground running since he's come up from Norwich City, and the fans love him already, don't they?
They do, yeah, and I think he really epitomises what people want to see, because he really carries a team, demands the ball, aggressive on and off it, real quality, which, as you see for that strike, because that is by no means an easy goal, is it? Another goal for Rangers from a set piece, which has been a real positive since Michael Beale arrived at the club. And you need more like that. That's what Beale said, I think, a couple of months ago. More like that, please, on the topic of Cantwell and Raskin. You'd be confident if Beale can get those types of players in with that type of quality that can hit the ground running, then he'll be a success, because Cantwell has done that in not the easiest of circumstances, and a team that I think, as everyone can see, is nowhere near what Beale will hope to have his Rangers looking like kind of at the end of pre-season and summer. So another good outing for him and Robbie McCrory as well. I mean, I feel like you've been calling for that single-handedly for about 2 seasons there.
Everyone has, to be honest.
But I thought he did. I mean, it's a big save at 0-0. And again, I think at both ends of the pitch this season, don't know what you think on this, Rangers haven't had difference makers. They haven't had people who, when either they're not playing well, they can't go and take a chance and make it 1-0, or when they're perhaps under the cosh a bit, they can't see them through and make a save at 0-0 that keeps the game there. I thought he did really well, and I don't think there's an argument that he should play between now and the end of the season with, as you say, probably definitely a deserved send-off for Al McGregor against Hearts.
Yeah, I thought he was good at the weekend. Some top saves from Robbie, and I'm interested to see more of him between now and the end of the season. He'll surely get the game at the weekend against Celtic, you'd imagine. Interesting point here from Jim. He says, I thought it was an interesting cameo from Wright on Sunday. Giving him a run of playing up front through the middle might be worth a try. Something different against Celtic. And just off the back of Jim's comment, DK says, Derek, I'm certain that Beale will play Wright, Sakala and Matondo up front against Celtic. He will want them to press high. Can you see that happening, Joshua? I wouldn't be too surprised if that was the front three. I'd imagine next season it'll be entirely different front three than what that is. But at this moment in time, is that the best option, do you reckon?
I thought Matondo actually had a pretty decent game, all things considered. Obviously, playing against a deep defence, so maybe that's not always the best opportunities for him to showcase his ability, but I think he deserves a chance to have a few more games. Thought Hadji was decent enough as well. Obviously, he'll still be building up to fitness, but you can see what he brings when he is on the pitch, especially in that kind of more advanced role. My instinct would be it would be Sakala, Matondo, and probably Cantwell. You obviously don't have Tillman in there. Wright did look good when he came on, but the difficulty for Rangers is that, the season's now done, so it's hard to, I guess, be optimistic about players who have been here for a few seasons.
He's done that before. I mean, Scott Wright, hasn't he? He's like an impact player at times, but he's been given opportunities and he hasn't quite grasped them, has he, Joshua? That's the thing that frustrates many. I mean, it's okay looking good in little flashes, but you need to do it for a prolonged period of time. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, when I was watching back the game against Leipzig last week, I actually forgot that it was Wright that he doesn't only set up the second goal, but he wins the ball back for the second goal, and he played a really important part towards the end of that European run as well. But I don't think there's any. He's had his chance to be a player for Rangers in that attacking third domestically. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I guess the question is, who do you play in midfield if Cantwell moves forward? Options are limited because Kent was out of the weekend. We've just discussed Morelos. Tillman's injured. He's back in Germany as we speak. So that front three is going to be totally different. Maybe that's not a bad thing based on the last few games because Rangers haven't had that cutting edge. But they'll need to. I think the only way forward in this game is to press pretty relentlessly and be aggressive from the front. Not only because I think that's what the crowd will need on the basis of this season, and I think it's the best way to attack Celtic, but also Rangers, I think for the players they have available, it suits them if they've got Matondo and Sakala up top, and they just need to rely on someone being able to provide that clinical edge that they've not for the course of the season. Lowry was back on the bench at the weekend. I don't know what his match fitness is like because he didn't come on, Derek, but he's a name in there as well. Be surprised if he's thrown in from the start, but again, he's a player who you'd hope is going to be a real part of what Beale is building next season, and at some point he'll have to get his opportunity as well. Yeah, David Brown says, what about Arfield as a false nine with Matondo and Sakala wide? I'm not entirely sure he'll go with that, the manager. Well, interesting point just on Todd Cantwell. Denzel says, Cantwell is showing everyone else up. New neighbour too. Absolutely fantastic. I hope we'll see you and Todd perhaps on doing some little TikTok videos, Denzel, at some point in the near
That'll be
future.
good.
So, yeah, cracking neighbour to have, I'd imagine. This interesting point, just some transfer news from yesterday. Of course, Rangers linked with a whole host of players. The latest being the Arsenal centre-back Austin Trusty. Jack Salmon says, any truth in the rumours around Josh Maja or Austin Trusty? Of course, Trusty, first of all, he's an American international, 24 years of age, left-sided centre-back. He has been on loan at Birmingham City this season, and by all accounts, has done really well for the Blues. Apparently, the Daily Mail reporting that Rangers are interested in him. Apparently, he's valued at around £2 million, which seems a decent amount of cash for a player of that calibre and age. Rangers have been linked with a host of left-sided centre-backs. Joshua, I guess it's not surprising to see this is the latest one. I can't say that I know too much about him or have seen him in action, but he's done the business for Birmingham apparently this season, and it's clear that Michael Beale is looking to strengthen in these centre-back areas, and in particular, I'd imagine on that left-hand side.
Yeah, I mean, it remains to be seen, obviously, what happens with outgoings this summer, but as the squad is at the moment, I think you need another centre-back in there, definitely. Josh Madge has been a name that's been mentioned in the same breath as Rangers for quite a while, hasn't he? And obviously is in France. I think he's at Bordeaux at the moment, Derek. Am I right in saying that? Yes. I believe he is.
Josh Maja at Bordeaux, yeah. He was actually, yeah. I was surprised they're in the second division in France at the moment. They used to be a top side in France. But, yeah, he was asked about Rangers' interest, and he says he remained coy. He says he's not thinking about that, but he'll address it in the summertime. But he's a name that's been linked for some time now, hasn't he?
Yeah, he is, and obviously Rangers needs a starting striker. I mean, I think Cholak remains to be seen what happens with him. He, I think, is someone who could serve a function against certain opposition in the Scottish Premiership. Yeah, he's not going to be Rangers' main number 9 next.
But would he want to be a bit part player though? That's the only thing for me. I'm not entirely sure that he'd be satisfied with that.
It's a good point, and obviously you forget that he was the first name in the team sheet and the most consistent player. The most consistently selected player for the first 4 months of the season, up until he got injured right towards the end of Gio's reign. So, yeah, I guess it'll be dependent on what he wants as well. But as I say, I think he can serve a function in certain types of matches. He's also one that's kind of struggled with his fitness over the last really 6 months or so since Beale came into the building, or just before. But Rangers will need more than one player in that forward line, and they'll need more than one player to get them serious numbers in front of goal, because again, this season, who is the top scorer at this point? You're probably talking, is it Tavernier maybe?
Yeah, it's 16, Tavernier. I think, no competition, I'm sure. So, I'm sure Colak's just behind.
Yeah, so again, that's indicative of the fact that you just need more players in your front line. I've seen a comment there that about playing Tavernier higher up the pitch, and while I'm not going to agree with that, what you will see is, and again, you see this in the European run. You saw it. I'm trying to think what game recently it was, but what will happen more than often, I think Tavernier will be given more freedom when Rangers have the ball in the attacking third to just attack the box as much as possible, and be covered more often than not. Because what you would say is, if you're putting the ball into the box, he's one of Rangers' more dangerous threats at the back post. And this week, going into the Old Firm game, they're going to need him freed up as much as possible to attack that back post again, as you saw him do, I think, quite consistently in Europe last season.
Yeah, you know my thoughts on James Tavernier, and I agree with Stephen Gillespie. He says Tav at 9. Can't be any worse, is what I think. He said publicly he wants to play up front. Give him a chance. I don't think Celtic would be anticipating James Tavernier as a centre forward on at the weekend, Joshua. So that may just be the maybe the surprise that Michael Beale has up his sleeve. But yeah,
I'd be surprised. But yeah, no. On the topic of right backs, I was watching the Brighton game last night.
Wow, that was a turn up for the book, that wasn't it?
Nathan Patterson was brilliant. So good to see him. You know, he's had a tricky time with injuries, but he was brilliant last night. So good to see him getting that start and good performance.
Yeah, Sean Dyche doing a good job down there. Hopefully, I think Everton will steer clear of trouble. So still a few games left, of course, down there in the Premier League. But yeah, exciting stuff. And we'll finish up with this. Now, of course, Southampton have already been relegated from the Premier League. Lost again last night against Nottingham Forest, a bit of a classic there at the City Ground. Ross says, would you be up for seeing Joe Aribo back? It would mainly be for nostalgic purposes, but absolutely loved watching him in the blue. Seen a clip this morning on social media, some of the a sort of montage of some of his goals for Rangers, Joshua. He was brilliant when he was on his game, wasn't he? But I think that ship has sailed. I'm not entirely sure Joe Aribo would be want to come back up the road, but his move to Southampton hasn't necessarily worked out for him, has it? I thought he would. I mean, I've seen him score an absolute worldie in pre-season, but he's not had a look in under two managers now. Hassan Tuchel, the boy that came in from Luton Town, whose name escapes me, and Nathan Jones, sorry, and who have they got now? Southampton. I'm not entirely sure, but he's not.
I can see his face. Yeah, he always wears a turtleneck.
Let us know in the comments, folks. But he's not had the best of seasons at Southampton. If he was available, Joshua, are you bringing Joe back home?
Definitely hasn't worked for him. I just want to find out what this Southampton manager's name is because it's annoying me. It definitely hasn't worked for him. And I'm the same as you because I thought Ruben Selles. There you go, Ruben Selles. I thought it would work. They've obviously signed a lot of players. They've had a really difficult season. I mean, Beale, when speaking about Tillman and Aribo, called the comparison between them lazy recently, and I think that's fair because Aribo, I think he was always more of a box-to-box player than one who was going to get you 15 goals in a season. And I think he was brilliant at that. And at points, especially under Gio, you saw, and I guess when Beale came back in, how important he was because he wasn't there, carrying the ball forwards, progressing the ball for Rangers, especially on that right-hand side as well. But I think he'll be looking at his next move and thinking he needs to make his ambition of playing in the Premier League work, whether that be getting back up there with Southampton and a reformed team or a move elsewhere. But he'd be, I think, a player that would always be fondly welcomed back because he did a good job and left at the right time, maybe, Derek. You know, he's one who... one of the few who went last summer alongside Ibasi and obviously Patterson before him, and maybe, as I say, left at the right time after 3 seasons. But I think he'll be looking at getting a next move in England and making it work after, I'm sure, what's been a tricky season for him. Yeah, I wish Joe all the best. Hopefully he has a better season than what he has endured this term. Okay, folks, that'll do us there. Big thanks to Joshua and to everyone who has interacted with the chat. It's greatly appreciated. We'll be back again tomorrow to talk all things Rangers. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye.